Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hello, this is Gary Wilson, and welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. We're glad to have you back. If you haven't done so, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on any of your favorite of the 30 channels, namely Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, whatever your channel is. That would be great. And while you're out there, go ahead and visit the globalinvestoragent.com website, and you can align yourself with one of our agents who are in now 27 different states and also Canada. For those of you who want to invest in the States, doesn't matter where you are in the world, they are trained to work with us investors. They know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off-market deals, which is really big. They're not your typical agent, guys. And if you're an agent yourself and you've been curious about this, go to the website too and click on you can get fill out a form, you can talk to me, and I'll give you the specifics. It's a great thing to do to build out your model. So in any case, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Neil Schoepp. Neil, first off, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate you taking your time to do this. We're so glad to have you.
I'm really great that I could connect with you, Gary. It'll be a great day.
Well, we're gonna have fun here. So I know we've been speaking ahead of time, and I'm really excited about this one because it's a different subject that's probably more important than any other subject that I've ever taught here. So if you wouldn't mind, how about a little bit of background? You've got some great stories, about the bicycle, and then if you want to paint a picture for people, really about who you are, the real person, because then when we get into the details, they're going to remember more. It'll resonate more.
Gary, I was born and raised in New York City. Spent 40 plus years down there, and I hit every kid's exacta. I became a police officer and then a fireman. And those years were absolutely wonderful. I then retired, and I asked myself, what can I give back to the world? And that was my take on how to push through fears and how to just really make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I went to real estate, and I used what I've learned in the city, and I transferred that to real estate, and now to spreading the word of just getting a strong foundation for your mindset. If your mind is clear, everything else is quote unquote easy.
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, I thank you, and I admire you for being a policeman and a fireman, and especially in New York City. I mean, that's like ground zero. I mean, literally, not just figuratively, but literally too. I've been there quite a bit. I've got family up there. My sister's out on Long Island. I got a niece in Midtown, and they're usually a month out of every year. And best place on the planet. I'm not even a big city person. I can tell you, everybody's not been in New York City. You got to go. It literally is the best place on it. It's the center of the universe, So, in any case,
never sleeps.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, thank you for giving us a little bit of background there. You mentioned real estate, and you mentioned the whole thing about our mindset, which is really more important than anything you can learn academically. But tell us a little bit about what it is you actually do now. How did that, you're fireman, policeman, now you're doing this. So tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, currently.
So in the fireman and the police world, I was a W-2 guy. So I was married to the clock. I couldn't always make every ball game. I couldn't make every birthday. I worked literally 24 hours, 7 days a week. No holidays off. I worked all the time. And that started kind of having an ill effect on the family. So I wanted out of that W-2. And I asked myself, well, how do you get out of the W-2? I need this paycheck. And that led me to figuring out a different stream of income. Mm-hmm. That different stream of income turned out to be twofold for me. It turned out to be real estate, and it turned out to be a preschool. So I retired from the city of 8 million, and I moved to a town of the zip code has 15,000.
Wow.
So yeah, I went from one spectrum to the other. But here I'm able to help so many families because there's not a lot of services that are here. It's not like the city where you have a preschool in every corner. here it's very sporadic.
Mm-hmm.
So through that preschool and through real estate, I've created different streams of income. And now I'm here trying to just tell everybody that it is possible. You can actually do it. You get to make the choice of how you want your life to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, what are interested too, if we could go back a little bit in time, when did you first invest in real estate? Were you still a policeman or fireman, or kind of give us a real good give us the details of that transaction if you don't mind. I'll draw some stuff out here.
So it was just a little duplex, right? And I say just a little duplex because it was the first deal. There was a lot of fear that came with that because everybody I spoke to, it really is true. You speak to your uncle at the birthday party, and he's all of a sudden an expert on real estate, but he's never owned a piece of property in his life. And he's telling me how I'm going to get phone calls in the middle of the night, how I'm going to get plugged toilets, all of the stuff that everybody always relates to real estate. He's calling me a slumlord. What do you want to be, a slumlord? And it really kind of made me take a step back.
Yeah.
What pushed me over that line, what pushed me to actually write that check was I kind of tuned that out. I spoke to the wife, and the wife and I were on the same page of, no, this will be a really good piece of property to use as a college savings. So I purchased the duplex back in 2003 when I first had my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter is now attending Penn State.
Okay.
And I used the equity that was built up in that property to pay for college.
Nice.
So her college is now paid for. Like, I don't have to worry about the college bill. She's not going to graduate with college debt. So she's already, she doesn't even realize it, but she's already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And it was through that conversation with the wife that I was able to say, all right, you know what? This is the risk. This is the reward. We're going to go for it.
Yeah.
And later on now, if you fast forward to where I am now I'm in a property. I'm in a partnership on 43 doors. I'm in a partnership on 8 doors. And there's a whole bunch of other things going on. Like, real estate really can give you that foundational freedom that you're looking for. It's still work. It's not, there's nothing passive about it, guy. I mean, you know that amongst everybody, right? But it's still work, but it's work more on my timeline, as opposed to I have to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning and I can't leave till 7 o'clock at night because somebody else told me that.
Right.
I can't go to the ball game on Saturday morning because I have to work, because that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Right. If my kid has a ball game and I have to do something at the property, I can, for the most part, I can rearrange that property schedule to make sure it doesn't interfere with the ball game. And that's what I really like about it.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't mind me prying a little bit, you mentioned early on in that you've talked about the fear, and some of the remarks you were hearing from somebody who never even owned real estate. And I believe me, I get all the same kind of stuff. But how did you actually overcome it? Like, what did you do in your own mind? If you can think back that far, what did you actually do to give yourself permission to actually take that step? Because I remember the first one, boy, it's scary.
So it sure is. But then after you jump through the fire, the other side isn't all that bad. It's not made out. It's not as bad as your mind makes it out to be. Your mind plays horrible tricks on you. And it's kind of, what story are you telling yourself, right? Yeah. So back in my police days, I got to go back to answer this question of how I pushed through that fear of the duplex. I have to go back for a second and tell you a story about one of my first days as a police officer.
Okay.
So we're on patrol. I'm sitting in the radio car. We get a radio run for a gunpoint robbery. As we pull up to the location, The suspect bolts out of the store and starts running down the sidewalk. My partner jumps out of the car. I jump out of the car. We're running down the sidewalk. I barely know where I am because I'm brand new. Like I probably have about 3 weeks on patrol in this precinct.
Okay.
And my partner's 12 years, and he's chasing the individual. That individual runs around the corner. My partner runs around the corner. I come up to the corner, and in the academy, remember, I'm fresh out of the academy. So in the academy, they're telling us never blindly run around corners because you don't know what's on the other side. And this guy has a gun, no less, right? So now I'm coming up to the corner, and all I hear is the instructor from the academy telling me, don't go around the corner, don't go around the corner, be careful, be careful, be careful. And I get to the corner, and now I have to go around the corner because my partner went around the corner. So I go around the corner, and my partner now has the guy in cuffs. He's on the ground. He's arresting the guy. And I said to him, Jack, what happened? Like, how'd you go around that corner so easily? And he said to me, if I don't go around that corner, that he gets away. And if he gets away, he gets to terrorize somebody else into the day.
Yeah.
And that's not happening on my watch. And that became a mantra that I used whenever I faced fear, not on my watch.
Right.
So whenever I came up against something, I would say to myself, not on my watch, not on my watch, not on my watch. Now, how does that relate to buying a duplex, right? Because one is chasing a guy around the corner or running into a burning building or searching at a warehouse or something, and one is buying a duplex. That mantra resets my mind. So what happens is in fear, when you're having that fear of the duplex, what are the thoughts that are going through your mind? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. I'm going to lose all my money. The tenants are going to destroy the units.
Yeah.
Right? All of those things are playing in your mind. Enter in my mantra, not on my watch. It shocks my mind back into reality.
Yeah.
It resets my mind. That's one of the techniques that I still use to this day. Because I get that mind reset, and then all of a sudden that loop, that story loop, that's my mind is going over and over and over. We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
But those thoughts that are constantly going around and around in a circle, now I stopped it. Now I get to have the thought that I want to have. It's not the automatic thought. It's not Uncle Joe's thought when he doesn't even know what he's talking about. But that's what I'm buying into because it's Uncle Joe, right? It's not that. I get to reset my thought process.
Yeah.
I get to stop and say, is this really what's happening? Are these thoughts really true? Or no, hold on a second. No, this isn't how it works, because if this is how it works, nobody would own duplexes. Nobody would be buying real estate. There would be no real estate investors. There's a reason why the wealthy invest in real estate. They're wealthy for a reason. So that's specifically what I use to get through my fear on that first duplex. Yeah.
Well, okay, all right, so now fast forward to what you're doing now. You're helping other people with their mindset. So that behavior, I would say that at that point in time, you learned it, like you experienced it firsthand. That's a big first step. But what about on an ongoing basis? How do you summon that ability to like the fear? To me, the fear probably would still be there. Like you still have thoughts, the toilet clogging in the middle of the night, all those things, and some of it does actually do happen, but a very small percentage of time. But the thing that and the interesting thing about fear is a lot of the things we fear actually never really do happen anyways. It was a famous saying from Mark Twain said that, like 97% of all your fear never actually happens. But how do you, what can you tell people? How can you work with people to condition them or train them or coach them so that they can do this on demand? It becomes habit, like they don't have to struggle with it every time, Is there a way to do that? Yeah.
You touched on a whole bunch of things that I just want to throw out. Okay. So I I want to formulate them
like the
so
subject,
they come out appropriately. So first, I want to really hammer home, if you take anything out of this podcast, this episode, it's this: that fear isn't a stop sign, it's a yield sign. Fear is real. It's a real emotion. Sometimes fear is what I call true fear and can kind of kill you or really seriously damage you. And then there's the other type of fear, which is what we're talking about today, more on that anxiety side of things. Mm-hmm. But fear is just a yield sign. So when you first feel that fear conjuring up, take a step back. Okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What do I not like about this? Is that true? Is any of that true? Mm-hmm. What are the real risks here? Not the perceived risk, but what are the real risks here?
Okay.
And what that does is, again, we start living in awareness as opposed to that auto loop of thoughts. That auto loop of thoughts. Mm-hmm. If I asked you how many thoughts the average person had in a day, what would you tell me?
Oh, I've heard this before. I know I'm going to get it wrong. Is it 1,500? Or no, that's per hour, I think, or per minute, maybe.
Yeah. So it's 12 to 60,000, depending on who you.
Holy smokes! Okay.
Who you talk to, right? So I know I don't have 12,000 thoughts a day, right? Like I can't tell you. I can't make a list of 12,000 thoughts that I've had, but I've had 12,000 thoughts, right? But 80% of those thoughts are negative, Gary.
Yeah.
95% of them are repetitive. So if we're having 12,000 thoughts and 80% are negative and 95% of them are repetitive, the playback loop that we're having is based not purely, but based on negative thoughts, based on the toilet's going to clog, based on there's going to be holes in the walls, there's going to be water leaking out of the ceiling, I'm going to get cold at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to have to cancel my vacation, I'm going to lose my money. And those thoughts will constantly play in the background.
Okay.
So again, it's becoming aware that this happens. Identifying when you're in that loop and then saying, I'm going to focus on this. So we'll go back to the duplex with my daughter, right?
Okay.
I could have easily focused on how I was going to lose money, on how tenants were going to destroy the property, on how interest rates were high back then. When I first purchased the property, I purchased it at 6.5%.
Yep.
That sounds funny now, but
yeah.
That was a high interest rate back then. And I could have let all of this play on me. Mm-hmm. Instead, I identified that it was happening. And I said, well, what am I getting out of this? What's the positive of this? And the positive was I had a forced savings account for college. It was a 509. It was Neil's private 509, right? I had the access to the capital. I knew that somebody else was going to be paying down my mortgage.
Yeah.
And that equity that property was building, every time I had to go to that property, this is another big thing that I didn't realize at the time, but it was never a chore to go to the property because I wasn't going to the property to fix something. I was going to the property to secure funding for my daughter's college education.
Yeah.
So it made it easy, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
But if I had to go down there at 7 o'clock at night, or I had to travel there over the weekend, or whenever it was no big deal because I was in the mindset of I'm doing this for my daughter.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, so going forward, is there I've heard it used that people use the term affirmations, like things you say to yourself in front of the mirror in the morning And when I first did them, by the way, I probably did them wrong because I would say things like, I will this, I will that, like things that are going to happen. And finally, I met a teacher. She said, actually, you should start it with I am. She says you're going from the doing to the being. But how important is that? Like, why, like, if you could, can you shed some light on that? Like maybe the way our minds work, the science behind it? Because that to me was a critical turning point for me, So, and I don't really understand all the science behind it, Hi, Gary here. Just want to say thanks real quick for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate you doing that. And all I want to do is take a quick minute to introduce you to the Healing House Foundation. Okay, so if you're watching this on video, I'm going to let you see it. If you're on podcast, you're not going to be able to see it, but you can see it in the click on the show notes on globalinvestoragent.com, and you can see, well, that's the main website, globalinvestoragent.com. And so it's a great place for you to connect, not just with me, but with all the agents we have around the country, and check it out. But more importantly, if you click on the Healing House Foundation, okay, you can read all about it. And this is a 501(c), totally voluntary. Nobody here makes a dime. So all the proceeds, 100%, go to local needs in your area where you live for people that need help, all walks of life. I mean, every one of us knows somebody that needs help. And this is our way to come back full circle in the world of real estate where we make so much money. Let's help those who are in need. Sometimes they need a helping hand. Sometimes they need to be taught how to fish, and sometimes they just need to fish. Sometimes they need both. So this is a way for you to participate. Check it out. All kinds of stories, examples. It's very flexible in that we can earmark funds for a particular need that you have in your area, as long as it's related to the need of housing. That's all. It doesn't matter what the underlying circumstances are. We pray for healing for everybody. So in any case, thanks for indulging me. Let's get back to the podcast.
So it changes our mind because we're living now in that present moment.
Okay.
So when I say I am a real estate investor, right? So let's pretend we have somebody out there that he wants to get out of his W-2, he wants to buy his first duplex, and he really wants to kind of start getting and start receiving all of the benefits of real estate.
Okay.
When I ask that individual, well, hey, Joe, what's up? What are you doing over the weekend? How you been? I haven't seen you in a while. What are you doing? Does he say, I am a real estate investor now? Or does he say, I'm still working at the electric company?
Yeah.
When you use the phrase, I am, you're telling your mind what to focus on. I am. Now, I don't want you to confuse this with, you can't, when your mind is, when you're saying something to the effect of, I am wealthy, right? I'm not a big believer in that, because I believe that the mind will know the difference between that, right? You sit down at the end of the month and you balance your checkbook. You sit down at the end of the month, you pay your bills, you look at your checking account, and your mind is going to have that conflict there of, well, you're saying I'm wealthy, but I'm not seeing the result of wealth.
Yeah.
But when you say I am a real estate investor, that is now aligning you with being that investor, and you're going to start asking yourself other questions. You're going to ask yourself, well, what would a real estate investor do in this situation? How would a real estate investor look for properties? What relationships would a real estate investor seek out? Right? What proximity is a real estate investor in? And when you start asking yourself those different questions, you then start changing gradually the course that your life is taking, the actions that are happening. I am specifically speaks to you in that moment, as opposed to I will is kind of off in the distance. There's nothing concrete about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there I mean, to be able to change our mindsets and our, which is really it changes the point of view from where we're acting, what we're acting from and speaking from.
Yes.
The being part. But is there a process people can use, or like can anybody learn to do this and be this kind of person, develop these habits, or is there if you take people through training, or how does that? Tell me a little bit about that if you don't mind.
So the direct answer is yes. Anybody can learn it.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that I was born in New York City. So what's the first thing you think about when you hear New York City?
Lots of big buildings.
You think, right? Big buildings. I think of crime. Just straight out, like crime. I think of scams. I think of people always trying to take advantage of you. When I was a kid, my father would always tell me, "What's that guy's angle? What's he looking to do? You can't trust anybody." And then I became a police officer, and I literally would take reports from victims of lottery ticket scams. So if you don't know what a lottery ticket scam is, the winning numbers come out on, let's say, a Tuesday. That Tuesday morning, somebody will buy a new lottery ticket for the lottery that's coming out on Thursday, but he'll buy them with Tuesday's numbers, the winning numbers, and show them to somebody that's unexpected of the scam, and then the victim will write them a check. And usually it's cash in a coffee can. It's really what it is.
Okay.
And their life savings walks out the door on this scam. So I was exposed to all of this. So all of the things that my father was telling me, I didn't trust anybody. Everything my father was telling me was coming true. Three-card Monte, the whole 9 yards. I didn't trust anybody. Partnerships were just somebody trying to take advantage of me. When I learned mindset and I put myself in proximity to the right individuals, and I started paying attention to what was really going on, I was able to now form partnerships. I have 4 separate partnerships. I'm in several different properties, and I created different products. And all of this is just because I now have a different mindset. I'm looking at life through a different lens. And that lens is that I can add value to people. That lens is the lens of the go-giver.
Yeah.
Right? That lens is the lens of how can I help or add value to someone without expectation of anything in return.
Yeah.
And when I start approaching things like that, all of a sudden people want to help me. They want to be around me. They want to be part of what I'm doing.
Right.
So in learning, so how do you physically learn to change how you view life? One is awareness. So slowing down. There's something in Japan called Shishokenko. And it's literally point and call. Do you realize we live 47% of our day in autopilot? 47% of our day we're walking around and we don't even realize what we're doing. You don't believe me? When's the last time you drove home from work? Do you remember getting on the highway or getting off the highway?
Yep, I know.
You remember, like, you driving on the highway, all of a sudden you pass 3 exits. And you don't even realize you passed the 3 exits. That's autopilot. You walk into a room, you turn the light switch on, autopilot. And autopilot's there so that our mind can process more things, because our mind can only process a limited amount of items. So autopilot will make it easy for our mind so that our mind can process things that we don't do on a regular basis.
Okay.
So just slowing down and paying attention to different things. Like if I was to do Shishokenko right now, it's point and call, right? So I would point at the light and scissor and laptop. When I'm walking down the street, building, stop sign, car. Now, I'm not asking you to walk down this street saying things, but I would do it in my mind because that would put me in that moment.
Right.
Right? When you meet somebody, you look them in the eye and you're able to tell me their eye color.
Yeah.
after you stop the conversation, right? Actively listening to that individual so that you can ask them good, engaging questions. Best way to do that, repeat the last three words they said.
Okay.
And then they will just elaborate and elaborate and elaborate. It feels a little strange when you first do it.
Yeah.
But once you start practicing it, it kind of happens automatically now. You don't even have to think about doing it.
Yeah.
After you have awareness, it's building out your education, right? So there are certain books that you should be reading so that you understand how mindset works, what it is, what they're talking about when they say paradigm shifts and things along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And proximity. So now I don't think about signing on the dotted line to buy that duplex because I'm in a room with people that are signing on the dotted line all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm around individuals, like-minded individuals, but even more than like-minded individuals, because you could be in a room where it's all like-minded individuals and everybody in that room just wants to go out and buy their first duplex, which isn't a bad room to be in, but it's not the best room. So you want to be in a room where you have somebody that's 2 or 3 years ahead of you.
Yeah.
And then that makes it the journey much easier because now I have the confidence of if I hit a roadblock, I just pick up the phone. I just call somebody. And they're like, yeah, no, don't worry about that. That's all right.
Okay. So how you have a website? Is there a place people can go to and look and see? Because it sounds like you went to a small town and you're working like who's the primary? What's the ideal person that you generally work with to help them with their mindset? And by the way, I think you're the ideal person to be doing this too, because not just because of you're doing it, but because of your background. But who's your like ideal person to work with? You know.
So most of the people I'm working with are the person that just got out of college and now realizes that life is real, right? And now they're like, oh, I have this college debt and I have this job that I have and I'm not really happy there. And how do I get out of that hamster wheel type environment? How do I learn how to make different choices? So it's really anybody that wants to make different choices and set their life on a different course. We get to make the choices. We are everywhere. We are exactly where we should be in life.
Okay.
And we're here because of the choices that we've made.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to make different choices so that your life can take a different route, that's what I help you through. I help you with identifying that the choices are there to be made.
Right.
I just shed light on it. Everybody out there knows what they want. They do. Deep down in their heart, they know what they want. They just don't know how to get there.
Right.
So I'm kind of like a traffic cop. And I kind of just direct you and nudge you in the proper direction so that you can see what is there for you. Yeah.
That's always a sign of a good coach too. You know, asking the right questions of them that they have to answer, and then basically letting them arrive at their own. You know, basically you show them the water, but they have to learn. They have to drink on their own. You know. So
yes, but I'm that support that gets them to see that the water is something that they want to drink.
Yeah.
When they get to that. When you lead the horse to water, I support you in saying, yes, well, this is the water that you've been looking for.
Right.
You can drink it now. It's okay. You're going to be okay. It won't hurt you.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, what I know we're getting a little bit over on time here, but this is one of my favorite subjects because I practice this myself. But any words of wisdom or final advice you can give the people who are listening?
Yes. I want to leave you with this thought, Gary.
Okay.
80% of our fears do not come true.
Mm-hmm.
So now somebody out there right now, and this is why you need that paradigm shift, that person, somebody immediately had the thought of, what about the other 15%? Instead of embracing that, all right, well, there's only 20%, 15% out there that's floating around. Well, out of the 15%, that something actually did happen. When you speak to those individuals, they will say that whatever ended up happening wasn't as bad as they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Or they learned a very valuable lesson out of that, out of going through that experience. And when you do the math, it comes down to 97% of all our fears are pessimistic thoughts.
Yeah.
They're baseless, pessimistic thoughts. 97%.
Yeah, I agree.
So are you going to let that 3% stop you?
Yeah.
That's for you to decide. I would suggest and challenge you not to let it stop you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a study out of Cornell. I didn't make those numbers up myself. That's a study out of Cornell.
Okay. Not a bad school.
No, not at all.
But I definitely Ivy League. So, well, I tell you what, this has been really, really good. And I appreciate you sharing this because this is the kind of stuff that, we typically it's all the academics of, investing and flipping and buy rolls and all that. But this is so much more important because when you have the proper mindset, you're in alignment, you understand how to really eliminate, I wouldn't say eliminate, get in control of your thoughts so you can reduce the negative ones and focus on the positive ones and really be present and focus on who you are as a person, being present. Everything else flows a lot more easily. I can promise you that. There's more to this than meets the eye. There's a whole industry behind this, guys. So definitely, if I was you, I'd look up Neil. Oh, Neil, how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
Oh, we almost forgot about that, right?
Yeah.
Listen, we're talking so much. I could talk about this forever.
Yeah.
So they could reach out directly to me, Neil, at neilschoepp.com.
Okay.
And that's NeilSchoepp.com. There's a Facebook page, Neil Schoepp, and then there's the website, neilschoepp.com. So you can reach out to me by any means. My website, you can go to my website. There's a 25-page booklet that I wrote on fear that you can download, and it will give you a whole bunch of strategies. There's probably 10 or 15 strategies in there that I've used in the past that I still presently use. So I'm hoping that will help individuals when they're coming up against their fears, that they can just kind of take a step back, relax, assess, and then push forward. Lean into it. Use the energy. Use the energy that fear conjures up. Use it as excitement, and use that energy so that you can push forward instead of retreat.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right, and so everybody, please write this down. As long as you're not driving, it's Neil Schoepp. So it's Neil, last name Schoepp, SCHOEPP. That's the website, neilschoepp.com, and an email is neil@neilschoepp.com. And so Neil, thanks again for doing this, man. We really appreciate it, and everybody participating, thank you for listening. And if you could do this, leave a review for this podcast for Neil, because this is what makes the podcast world go around. It's the currency, so you get it for free, but everybody else has got to play by business rules. So your reviews are our currency. We really appreciate you doing that, because this has been a good one Neil's got a great history, great life story, and a lot to offer you. So we'll see you on the next podcast. And while you're online, by the way, remember to go to globalinvestoragent.com. Check it out. Get yourself an investor agent to work with you investing. And if you're an agent yourself, you should definitely check it out because it will absolutely open up a whole new revenue stream for you as far as your business goes. So, okay, guys, we'll see you next week on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Take care and God bless.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.